happened? He said because of the Romans. He said because of the Romans, which in the Quran or the Hadith, I should say the Hadith, the Romans are Christians. Anytime you hear the word Romans mentioned, it's not Roman Empire, because the Roman Empire, by the time Muhammad came, had already deteriorated. It means Christians. And it would mean Roman Catholic / In other words, that's why the word Roman is being used. All right, the Hadiths are the Hadiths and these messages or sermons we mentioned can be a part of the Shia branch of Islam. In other words, what I want to look at here is some Shia predictions and some Shia prophecies. And remember, Ahmadinejad, that's the branch that he is from. Keep that in mind. Iran, in fact, is about 97 to 98% Shia Muslim. And by the way, the Sunnis and the Shias have not really got along all the way back in the time after the death of Muhammad. They've actually been fighting off and on pretty steady for that entire time. Now, the first thing I want to share with you has to do with the Islamic calendar. Not our calendar, not a Jewish calendar, but the Islamic calendar. So this is where the story begins. The Islamic calendar has 12 months and 7 days a week, with Ramadan being the most sacred month. This is the month, they believe, when Gabriel brought the Quran and the teachings in the Quran to Muhammad. It operates on a 354 or a 355 days being a year, and it is a lunar calendar and not the solid solar calendar that what we call the Gregorian calendar that we use, which is 365 days a year. They celebrate 16 holy days on their calendar in the entire year. The calendar, now this is important, you can't miss this. The calendar began in 622 AD. The Christian calendar starts at 0, and you've got what's called BC, before Christ, you got AD, and we know, actually the simplest way of saying is after Christ. Anytime you see AD, you mean it's after the birth of Christ. That's how we operate our Gregorian calendar. However, the Muslims start with the Hajj, or they start with an important event in Muhammad's life in 622 AD. So 623 is the year 1. 624 is the year 2. 625 is the year 3. You see what I'm saying? So that means that the year 2010 is the year 1431 on the Islamic calendar. Does everybody understand that? Because now we go into some prophecies. Now, there were beliefs handed down in these hadiths, and I want to give you 3 of them that are interesting. Number 1, every 100 years, a person will come to renew faith in the hearts of Muslims. Number 2, there will be major renovations that will occur in the second 1,000 years. Now, this was predicted in the 14th century. And so the second 1,000 years, if you go at 622, you got to go to 1622 to make it 1,000 years. So they're saying in that second half, there'll be many renovations that will take place. And number 3, now this is the part we're going to get into. There were predictions for the year 1400 on the Islamic calendar. And 1400 in our calendar is 1979. Now I want you to hold that thought for just a moment. There was a man by the name of Bed Uziman, and I had Charlie call our friend in Israel, Joseph. A lot of you know him. Joseph's background is Muslim, and we began to ask Joseph, did he know about this man? He says everybody knows about the message he gave in a Damascus mosque to 10,000 Muslims in the year 1327. And he said that his name means something like not now, but coming in the future. So this man gave a speech that was written down and recorded that has been handed down, and Joseph told me the Shiites don't think much about it because we don't like predicting things as much as the Sunnis don't as much as the Shias. So the Shias really look to this guy, and it's important you understand that. And what nation did I tell you was strong in the Shia religion? Come on, talk to me, somebody. Iran. Okay, Ahmadinejad, where he's ruling from. Now, it is interesting that there are writings in the Hadith and also messages that were preached that the Mahdi would come after 1,400 years of the blessed period. Those who knew Muhammad even gave predictions about the 1400th year of Islam. Their calendar began in 622 AD, and this would mean they expected big things for 1979 to 1980. See, some of you have no idea where I'm about to go with this, but I do. So Muslims for years, hundreds of years, kept their eye on what would be the 1400th year, or on our calendar would be the year 1979. In an address, a sermon in Damascus, in the mosque in 1371, it was predicted that the Mahdi would silence unbelievers using science and civilization, and Islam would suddenly become superior to all other religions in the year 1421, which happens to be the year 2001 on our calendar. Maybe you've not put this together yet, but there was a man by the name of bin Laden, Osama bin Laden, who was living in a cave, who was hiding in a cave. Oddly enough, one of the teachings of the Mahdi is hiding in a cave. And you can't touch him or kill him because he's protected by God, by Allah. And Muhammad predicted the Mahdi, and the Hadith predicts the Mahdi appearing, and all of a sudden, one of their teachings from this the 1371 message is, look out for the year 1421, because when 1421 comes, the Mahdi will begin to appear. How odd that in 2001, bin Laden, who declared himself to his followers secretly as the Mahdi, decides to attack the West on September the 11th, 2001, bringing down the Twin Towers, attacking the Pentagon, and causing a war in terror, you hear me, that the West is still involved in. Why did they pick that year? Why did they say this is the year? I'm telling you, because those who believe in apocalyptic Islam, including this man Ahmadinejad, believe that they play a role in helping to fulfill prophecy. Interestingly enough, in 1371, Bed-Uzzaman predicted, quote, the sun will begin to rise at that time. He likened the sun to the rising of the prevalence of Islam's moral values to the world. There will be an initial redness of the sun in 1421, 2001, followed by a second enlightenment. And it would happen according to their calendar at the beginning of these years, 1981 through 1991. Now remember, the World Trade Center was then attacked in 1993 by a blind sheik and his followers. Here is a quote. During the worst period of the strife in the end times, Allah will no doubt send an individual of great light as the greatest mujtahid, quote, this is in parentheses, an Islamic scholar and leader who can bring in a verdict from verses of the Quran and Hadith when needed. A judge and a Mahdi. He will raise up leaders who will protect Islam at this time. The sun and light are themes that developed concerning the last day leaders who will rise in Islam. Please understand that. Don't miss that point. This man in 1327 taught that in 1400 years, or the 1400th year on the Islamic calendar, that there would be leaders that would rise, including the soon appearance of the Mahdi. I call it the theory of self-fulfilling prophecies. Now, what many of you have not put together yet, and I didn't expect you to, is what happened in the Islamic world on the 1400th year, which is 1979 and 1980. Shall we take a look at what happened those years? Number one, in 1979, there was a prediction there would be 4 peace treaties, and one would be made with the sons of Aaron, which were the Jews. The 4th one would be made between Egypt and Israel, and ladies and gentlemen, that was made in 1979. Why did Egypt make peace with Israel in 1979? Because there was a prediction that it would happen hundreds of years before, perhaps. The Islamic Revolution took place in Iran. The Shah was disposed, and the fanatics took over, and a man by the name of Ayatollah Khomeini, who again tried to poise himself as the expected Mahdi, came to power in 1979, the 1400th year on the Islamic calendar. In 1979, there was a battle in Mecca. At the Hajj that took place. There was a massacre at the Kaaba. It was the first day of the Islamic year 14 1,900. 30 were killed. Do you know why that happened? I wrote about it in one of my books. A man stood up in Arabia and declared himself to be the Mahdi that they were expecting in the first day of the year 1400 in 1979. In 1980, wow, Iran and Iraq went to war. The Sunnis and the Shiites began to fight. Saddam Hussein began to fight the Ayatollah Khomeini's people in a battle for the control of a refinery island that sits between the two countries. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, why would there be a battle in 1980? Because of predictions which are handed down, there would be a war in Iraq. Is anybody listening to what I'm saying? 1981. Oh, it was predicted in these sermons. The king of Egypt will be killed somewhere following 1400. In 1981, the Islamic Brotherhood assassinated in a parade Anwar Sadat, who had made the fourth treaty, the treaty between Egypt and the Jews. Oh, I hope you're hearing me. Now, the point I wish to make is this. Why suddenly, and you can trace it back, you study it, why suddenly in 1979, in the country of Iran, the Shia Muslim, why did the Muslims have an overthrow? Why did the fanatics take power? Why did those who believe the strongest in the Mahdi come to authority and have remained in authority to this day? Because I'm telling you, they are basing what they are doing on what I call Islamic apocalyptic prophecies. This is something the West does not understand. We understand our Bible prophecies, and we look at it this way. Well, the Lord's going to do it when He wants to do it. Jesus will come back when He's ready to come back. Sure, Israel was a nation. Hallelujah. That's a fulfillment of prophecy. But these individuals, some of them, including Ahmadinejad, has believed he must do certain things in order to make the predictions come to pass and be a part of Islamic history in introducing the final man. Oh, here's another prophecy they had. Quote, before the hour comes. That means the hour, the very last days, there will be a dusty and smoky tribulation like patches of dark light. When the towers fell, and I went back to Israel, and that smoke was stirring. This is what they told me. Muslims said, we grew up as kids hearing that when you see big buildings fall, and when you see smoke and dust, it is a sign of the last days. They predicted this in their prophecies. Quote, the people of Iraq will be divided into three groups. One part will join the looters. One group will flee and their families be left behind, and another group will fight and kill. Prepare yourself for doomsday when you see this. This is not a recent prediction. We're going back hundreds of years. Guess what? The United States government, this actually happened under Bush 1. Herbert Walker Bush. When they were going in there was a plan to divide Baghdad in half. It was called Desert Sword. And they were going to put three divisions. The Shias to the south, Sunnis in the middle, and Kurds to the north. That plan has still been discussed on the drawing board because there are three different ethnic ideas, ethnic beliefs, prophetic beliefs, and they figure if you put them all in their little groups, they'll all get along a lot better. Hey, folks, do you understand that this is what happened? There was a group of looters, there was a group of people fleeing, and there was a group, oh, by the way, headed up by Muqtada al-Sadr, the head of the Mahdi army, that fought the U.S. troops, put explosives out, tried to kill as many as they could to run the U.S. troops out. So what I'm saying is, as we go to war, you have another man connected to the Shia religion with his black turban on. By the way, that's in Islamic prophecy too. And he is telling people we must rise up. Why do you tell people to rise up? Because they know their teachings. They are taught these things from a child. Listen, you don't teach your kid half the Bible that the Muslims teach their kids, the Quran and the Hadith. They're 7- and 8-year-old kids. You listen to me, that can quote the entire Quran because they get that word inside of them, because that's how strong they believe. By the way, the latest prediction is the economic crisis will end in 2014. Wonder why? Let me tell you how Islam's going to take over the world one day prophetically. Let me tell you how the Antichrist will be linked to that religion, and let me tell you why it will work. It's one word. It's called interest. They call it something else. We call it in the Bible interest. Interest has killed us. That we print money in the United States with the Federal Reserve, and we owe them $2 trillion